Hi, welcome everybody to the pilot episode of the. We're going to be covering mostly the NBA and the NFL, though there may be some interesting cross-sport topics that we'd like to talk about. And I'm Mark. This is Jason over here, sitting to my right, and we just want to introduce ourselves a little bit for a second, just to let you know who we are. And so, Jason, if you want to start off the introductions.
Yep, Jason Thomas. I am a Cowboy fan, America's team. You know what I'm saying? Dude, I love basketball. So, college basketball, huge Duke fan ever since J.J. Redick. I'm not a bandwagon person, so all you haters, just keep hating just because we're better than you. Gotta love my Lakers. That purple and gold, man. Kobe was the best player ever. No, hands down, can't argue that. It's.
I mean, you could argue that.
It's a wrap. Kobe's the best. But then I love me some. I just love sports, man. What about you, Mark?
And
they call you what? The White Stallion?
The White Stallion is that's my underground alias. If I was ever a superhero, I'd probably have a big horse mask, and it'd be the White Stallion. I'd have a TWS in the sky somewhere with the skylight. But I'm from California, and I am a football fan first. I love basketball though, and so it's kind of ironic that I'm a Raiders fan coming off of a 4-win season, and also a Warriors fan coming off of 2 championships, maybe a three-peat. I think it's going to happen. And so the best thing that happens to me is when people ask me, oh, who's your NBA team? I tell them the Warriors, and they accuse me of being a bandwagon fan. But I've been living in waves of depression with my Raiders ever since I was 10 years old. So I really don't buy the bandwagon argument. It's kind of sad they're going to Vegas, but I'm really excited for the future of the team. And yeah, I'm really a pro sports fan, so you won't hear me much talking about college unless it pertains to drafts because they're potential pro players, if that makes sense. But yeah, football's my first love. And I'm just really excited to do this podcast with Jason, and we're going to get right into it. I know we're a little bit late on this, but we're going to be talking about the NFL draft, which happened last week. And we're going to talk about some key players that we really found interesting, important. So let's just start off with Kyler Murray. And Kyler Murray, needless to say, has been universally praised by a lot of people. And people think he's an absolute stud. Jason, I just kind of want to get your thoughts on the Arizona Cardinals and their quarterback situation, them going with Kyler Murray over Josh Rosen. What do you think about that?
Well, what I think about it is I think it is a win for Josh Rosen.
No, that's an interesting take. I haven't heard that one.
The reason why I say that is because obviously the Dolphins are rebuilding as well, but they're less of a rebuild than the Cardinals are. The Cardinals have a lot of holes to fill. They're in the recent, I'd say, 3 to 5 years, they're probably one of the oldest teams with ages of players on their roster. And so they need to bring a lot more youth. For the Cardinals, I think Kyler Murray is that youth that they need. I'm not saying Josh Rosen couldn't get it done. I understand 3-13 season is not the best, but being a quarterback, it's a little bit harder. But in this draft, I think Kyler Murray has a lot of the tangibles to be more successful than Josh Rosen for the Arizona Cardinals. And so, I like Kyler Murray. I liked watching him at OU. And if you think about it, he sat behind Baker Mayfield. Obviously Baker Mayfield's not an elite quarterback yet, but he has the potential to be so. And so studying behind him, seeing how he ran the offense at OU under Lincoln Riley, and now with Cliff Kingsbury, is very familiar with Kyler Murray. There's a huge relationship there. When it comes to the situation, I think it's a win for Josh Rosen going on being with the Dolphins. I think it's a better situation for him and his skill set and the style of play, their offense that they run in Miami. And I think it's a win for the Cardinals in getting Kyler Murray.
So let me ask you this. You think they're both good situations potentially for both of these quarterbacks, but do you think the Arizona Cardinals made the right decision in drafting Kyler Murray and trading Josh Rosen, or do you think they should have stuck with Rosen as their guy?
Looking at this situation, especially the quarterback situation and production, I mean, we're in a league now where everyone wants to win now. I mean, obviously you have to rebuild, but when it comes to rebuilding, you want to see results. And I think adding Kyler Murray to your team is the best way to get results.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. Now, this is a little bit of bias as a Raiders fan. I do not think that the Arizona Cardinals made the right decision drafting Kyler Murray. Maybe that's because I just wanted him there at 4 for my Raiders to take, but that's neither here nor there. I really think Josh Rosen was the guy in Arizona. Kind of like you were hinting on earlier, Arizona wasn't a very good situation, and I don't think Kyler Murray would have been that much more successful than Josh Rosen his rookie season under the same circumstances. I think they fired their offensive coordinator. They hired a new one out throughout the middle of the season. They had a bad offensive line, bad defense. They didn't have any weapons outside of Larry Fitzgerald. David Johnson was hurt. And this rookie quarterback came in and was actually able to stay healthy and finish the season. I think that was a huge win. I think that's a testament to Josh Rosen's toughness and how smart he is, really, being in that kind of a situation. And I think the Arizona Cardinals, like you said, have a ton of holes. I think they could have benefited from someone trading up to grab Kyler Murray. And I know he is an electrifying talent. I know that he has the potential to be the next big NFL superstar. But like I said, with all those holes, you really didn't fix your defense that much in this draft. You really didn't address that offensive line too heavily, and it's basically going to be a similar situation, I think, that Josh Rosen had last year. So we'll see what Cliff Kingsbury and Kyler Murray can do. I obviously think Kyler is a special player, but I think the cards are kind of stacked against him, pun intended, I guess, in this situation. So I think we both kind of hinted on this. We don't think Kyler Murray is going to be a bust, but what kind of quarterback do you think Kyler Murray is going to be going into the future?
I mean, looking at his physical attributes, obviously he's, 5'10"?
5'10" and a quarter or something like that?
And I'm sure they gave him a little extra.
He was probably wearing some high Nikes.
He was wearing his cleats, obviously when they measured him. But to me, I think of him as kind of like a Drew Brees-esque kind of player. Drew Brees is also at 5'10", 5'11". He's pretty short. Russell Wilson, is also that short too. But the thing that I like about Kyler Murray in the comparisons to Drew Brees is he has an arm. And, Drew Brees, when he needs to use his legs, he can use his legs. Uh-huh. I think Kyler Murray has a better usage with his legs. I think he's quicker, he's faster. But I like the the decision making that he made as a quarterback, standing in the pocket when he needed to, reading defenses when he was flushed out of the pocket, checking down, making the right throws, or even just tucking the ball and running it. And so I know Drew Brees doesn't run a lot, but I think there's a lot of comparisons with Drew Brees.
Okay. I think some of those Drew Brees comparisons are very valid, especially with the slight movements in the pocket, him able to find the throwing lanes. I think that's very accurate. To me, I think the world of Kyler Murray. Honestly, I think he can be a stronger-armed, faster version of Russell Wilson, which to me is insane because Russell Wilson's one of the greatest quarterbacks I have ever seen. If you're talking about the greatest quarterbacks that I've seen in my lifetime, it would probably have to be Brett Favre, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, and then probably Russell Wilson. I think that highly of him, and I think Kyler Murray has that kind of potential. Again, I don't like the situation he's necessarily placed in. I think the offense will fit what he does well, but I don't really trust Arizona management-wise or organizational-wise. But I think the sky's the limit for this kid. He's got all the physical tools. I know there have been some questions about his study habits, and if he doesn't improve those or do those, I think you're going to see him struggle a lot throughout his career, be this supremely talented player. But honestly, I think he could be the best quarterback in football in a short amount of time, maybe the next couple of years. But anyways, moving on to the next topic of the NFL draft. We just kind of wanted to look at the draft in a totality, and we wanted to ask which teams had the best and worst drafts and what we think our biggest steal of the draft was. And so I'm gonna start first with the Best draft, again, Raiders bias. I think the Raiders had the best draft. And the simple fact that, yes, they may have reached at number 4 for Cleveland Farrell, but I think he's going to be a very good football player. I don't really think there's that much of a bust factor with him. I think he can start from day one, come in and make an impact. With Josh Jacobs also in the first round, they're going to have a bell cow. They're going to have a guy that they can hand the ball off to 20 times a game, maybe catch the ball 6 times a game, and he's going to be very productive in that offense, and he does what John Gruden likes, just to grind the clock out and keep the possession in his hands. And Jonathan Abram, a strong safety who's going to come down and hopefully solidify that run game for us, which has been an issue for years and years and years. We haven't been able to stop the run, and this guy's going to bring a physical attitude on that side of the defense. So, Jason, to you, which team had the best draft?
I'm going to say and this is going to be very surprising because I really don't like this team, but it's the New England Patriots.
Wow.
I know.
I know no one likes the Patriots, though, so you don't really have to qualify that.
But, I mean, one thing that I really liked was their first pick. Fricks.
N'Keal Harry?
Yeah, sorry. I blanked out his name. N'Keal Harry. He is a big receiver. He is that go-to receiver. And that's one thing that the Patriots, are lacking right now in their receiver core. Traditionally speaking, there was the trend of, smaller slot receivers. And, Bill Belichick's good about going with trends, in the NFL and following those. And it's been obviously worked very, very good for them. They have, 5 rings? 5 championships?
Been to 8 Super Bowls.
8 Super Bowls. The formula's working, but I think that this pick is good because they're also seeing that, it was good to have a lot of smaller receivers, but it's good to have that deep ball, that deep threat, just throw the ball up deep and have a big old receiver go up and get it, and so I love this pick. I thought it was great for them. I'm obviously not a Patriots fan, but when I was watching the draft and I saw that, I was like, oh man, here we go again.
Here we go again.
Bill Belichick just knows how to draft talent.
Yeah, he really does. And honestly, while you were talking about N'Keal Harry having that big receiver, I go back to thinking last season, when did Tom Brady really play his best? When he had a big guy like Josh Gordon to throw at. And they decided to go back to the well with that, metaphorically speaking. So that's, I think, like you said, here we go again with the Patriots. You roll your eyes when they turn in the car and that guy's still on the board. And now the Patriots have him, and he's going to be an all-pro. So it's just really annoying, isn't it?
Yeah.
But, okay, then switching gears, which team do you think had the worst draft?
Ooh, I'd have to go with the New York Giants, honestly.
Is that any Dallas bias in there?
Yes and no. I don't know. I don't really agree with that organization right now, at least where they're headed. Honestly, it feels like to me, putting my, my bias aside, seems like the management is just like a chicken with its head cut off. There's no clear direction of where they want to go. I honestly, even before the draft when they traded away Odell Beckham, I understand that it's a big contract, but they just signed him the year before, and it's let's just change things up, I just don't feel like they have a good sense of direction. And the quarterback that they picked with the 4th pick, Daniel Jones.
Daniel Jones, yeah.
Out of Duke, I've seen a lot of pre-draft and combine, scouting reports for him, and they say he has a ton of upside. I don't know. For me, I'm the kind of guy where you have to pass the eye test. I'm big on that. Obviously, people can develop and change, but to me, I think he's going to be okay. But honestly, we'll have to sit there and watch. But I just don't think they really drafted that well. It was kind of sporadic.
No, I completely agree with you. And while I was scratching my brain to think of any other team that might have had a worse draft than the Giants, I just couldn't. And it goes back to Daniel Jones, I think. Daniel Jones was my 4th-rated quarterback behind Kyler Murray, Drew Lock, Dwayne Haskins, and then right after him is Will Grier. So to draft that guy at number 6, telling me that he's the quote-unquote 6th best player in the draft, or the 2nd best quarterback, because in reality that's what the Giants were saying there, or maybe even the 1st. I don't know how they had him rated compared to Kyler Murray. I just don't see the upside. People say he has a ton of upside. I just don't see the arm talent. I see really awkward decision making at times. He doesn't complete a ton of passes in the offense that he's placed in. I just don't understand. I think they really like him because of the Manning connection. I know his quarterback coach knows Peyton and Eli Manning. But I don't know. I've seen a lot of issues and red flags on tape as well without the potential. So I think that was a bad pick. I like their Dexter Lawrence pick at 17. I did not like DeAndre Baker. I actually don't think he's that good of a corner. I don't think he's as fluid as people make him out to be, and I also don't think he has the speed. He might be able to play some man-to-man, but I think he'd be afraid of people running by him. So I do think the New York Giants, hands down, had the worst draft out of anybody, and I don't think it's close, honestly, because, like I said, sitting down and thinking about it, I could not think of another team that had as bad of a draft as the New York Giants. But moving on, what do you think the biggest steal of the draft was? Maybe the one player. It could be a first-round pick that may have fallen or a late-round pick. It's just the option is up to you.
I'm not really going to go with steal, but I really liked the Cowboys pick with their third-round pick. They picked Connor McGovern. The reason why I really like this pick is not just because I'm a Cowboy fan, but if you look at how they want to run their offense, they want to pound the ball, they want to run it, and solidifying that offensive line is something that has been a focal point and a priority for Dallas for the past 8 to 5 years. Once they drafted Tyron Smith, they've slowly rebuilt that offensive line into what it is today. Obviously, it's not the same offensive line that it was in 2014 when they were the number one ranked offensive line. And in the past few years, we've had injuries, and Travis Frederick last year had that immune system disease, and so he was trying to figure out how to deal with that. And then Zach Martin also got injured halfway through the season. So, we've been banged up, in the past few years, but with Travis Frederick coming back, and everyone else is coming back healthy. I think solidifying this offensive line. Connor McGovern's a guard out of Penn State. They like to run the ball. They're a very explosive offense, and so he knows how to win. He comes from a winning program, especially Penn State in recent years has made a total flip, a turnaround. And so I really like this pick, and I think it helps with what the Cowboys want to accomplish.
Yeah, see, that's, the interesting thing to me is that people like to rail on the Cowboys for being such a bad organization, but like you kind of stated, they really have an identity, defense and running game, and they've stuck to it, and they've actually been a relatively successful team over the past 5-6 years. They've been able to win games even with Dak Prescott at quarterback, so I think that was a really interesting choice. For me, the biggest steal of the draft is going to have to be the Seattle Seahawks getting one of the most physically imposing receivers I have ever seen at the bottom of the second round. And I understand that DK Metcalf has some injury concerns and some production concerns, but I look at that Ole Miss offense. I did not like their quarterback at all. I think that has a lot to do with it. And injuries, they're always concerning. Hopefully he can stay healthy. But if healthy, this guy has a lot of the same physical tools that Calvin Johnson did coming out. He's 6'5", has an enormous wingspan, runs a 4.3 40, and he's 230. I think that's just insane that he lasted that long. And to go to that team, the Seattle Seahawks, where you have an established quarterback like Russell Wilson, someone who knows how to get receivers involved and know how to get people the ball and his escapability, I think we could see something extremely special out of those two even this year. And people might be sleeping on it, but really, if DK Metcalf stays healthy, could you imagine Russell Wilson rolling out and throwing a bomb to this monster of a man? No one can keep up with him, and he's that strong. I think he's the biggest steal of the draft.
I will say, I agree with you. The one concern I have with him is, he's a big receiver. He's fast. In the combine, it was a 4.3 40?
Yeah, 4.33, I think.
Yeah. The only concern I have is, can he run routes? His route running ability. I know he can run a 9. He can, hopefully outrun you. And I know he can definitely do a slant. I just want to see him improve on his route running, tuning up those skills, learning how to shake a defender with, by running your routes and getting yourself open by running a correct route, or, just using those subtle movements to make the defense guessing where you're going to go. But I do agree he's a great pick, and he's going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, man, I'm not a Seahawks fan. One of my buddies is, and I'm really excited to see them play this year. I think they're going to be really dynamic on offense. But anyways, we're going to move on, talk about some NBA action. We know the playoffs are going on, and we're not going to have a huge conversation about this, but who do you think your title favorites are at this point?
Well, I would say the Lakers, but obviously they did not meet. They didn't make it for obvious reasons.
Unfortunately for you.
Yeah. Title favorites. For the East, for the longest time, my solid pick was seeing the Milwaukee Bucks make it. But I mean, watching the Celtics utterly just destroy them in Game 1, I was taken back. I'm not even gonna lie.
Wow.
I mean, obviously the Bucks took Game 2, so now it's tied 1-1. But I still have to go with Milwaukee. I just love Giannis. I love the length that they have, how they play. They hustle. They rebound really well. They play good defense. So for the East, I'm going to say Milwaukee. And for the West, as much as I hate to say it, I'm going to have to go with the Warriors, obviously. But my sleeper pick is going to be the Blazers.
You think so?
My sleeper pick, yeah.
You believe?
It's Dame time.
It's Dame time.
It's time for something to happen. So, I mean, they've this is the first time they advanced to the second round in like the longest time.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, they're a new team. They're reaching new heights as an organization. New achievements. And so, I think this series that they're in with the Nuggets is going to be a fun one to watch. Obviously, they lost Game 1, which is a little bit sad for me. But you watch. Dame time's about to turn up.
Dame time's about to turn up. Oh, man, I love Damian Lillard. He's from Oakland, big Raiders fan, so shout out to Dame Lillard. But for me in the West, it's the Warriors. I'm a Warriors fan. Come on, how am I going to pick against them? KD is just incredible. Doesn't matter if one of those guys has an off game, you still have 2 or 3 more guys that could pick up the slack. I'm not going to pick against them. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. In the East, I have a different opinion than you, both ways. I think it's Toronto. I think Toronto should be the favorites. I think they're the best, most well-rounded team in the East. They can shoot the 3-ball extremely well. They play really solid defense, and you have Kawhi Leonard. And I think the world of Kawhi Leonard. I think people have slept on him ever since he got injured in San Antonio a couple of years ago.
Was he injured?
Yeah, he was really injured. No, I'm talking about in the playoff game with the Warriors. I think that's kind of was his downfall. People stopped looking at him the same way. But Kawhi Leonard is one of those insane basketball players that just gets it done. He goes about his business, and he's going to win you ball games. And he's been there. He has the experience of the championship level in the West, beating a LeBron-led team. I know he was young, but he was able to do it with the Spurs. So moving on with another NBA topic. This is kind of a hot topic right now, and it's widely disputed. There are a million different opinions on it, very polarizing. But the refereeing, and more specifically the Houston Rockets, complaining about the refereeing. So if you haven't heard, the Houston Rockets have been complaining about the reffing because they feel that in the past the Warriors have received favorable reffing in the playoffs as opposed to the Rockets. And they are complaining about it a lot. Chris Paul's getting thrown out of games. James Harden is always looking at the refs on a 3-point attempt. And, I kind of don't like it. I think it's bad for the game. But we just kind of want to open this discussion up. What do you think about the reffing in the playoffs? And what do you think about teams' attitudes or players' attitudes towards the refs not giving them every call that they think they deserve?
Well, touching on, their reactions about not getting calls in the playoffs, I think any player in the playoffs is going to complain. I mean, the playoffs is where, everything matters. Every game matters in the playoffs. So, as a spectator, I'm not going to complain if they complain about, fouls or shots, when they shoot and stuff like that. I think it's, naturally speaking, compared to the, let's say, mid-season of the regular season versus, like, the playoffs, it's not going to be as much complaining, But, so I guess, when you ask me that question, I don't really care too much. It doesn't really faze me. But I guess one thing that I do think is interesting, though, is the Rockets, their style of play. We were talking about this earlier before as we were setting up, that the Rockets seem to play for the fouls. So You know, in
course.
my opinion, that does play a factor in how referees game plan to ref. You know, I'm sure, you know, they're obviously experienced. You know, like to ref in the playoffs, like you have to have, you know, a certain criteria, be in the year or in the league a certain amount of years. You know, and they're professionals. You know, they are human, so they do make mistakes. But I think overall, like, you know, when it comes to game planning for them, I don't think they're intentionally trying to, like, tilt games, you know, and plan like, oh, I should call like this way. But I think more of like understanding the matchups that are going to be happening, players that are playing in the game, you know. And I mean, everyone knows James Harden plays for the foul. I mean,
Absolutely. You watch him
every
it's
game.
obvious.
First game of the season, preseason, when he was in summer league, but way back in the day.
At the park.
Yeah, I'm sure in friggin' Pee-wee basketball, he was still playing. He was playing for the foul.
Could you imagine a little James Harden, like a 6-year-old James Harden with his beard? Like, honestly, playing for the foul?
That'd be scary.
Wouldn't it?
I'd question that boy's age. But I really think that plays a part, you know? To me, watching the Rockets play all year, they always play for the foul. And I understand there's strategy to that. It's not a popular way of playing because it kind of diminishes just the feel of the game, you know, and just the culture of it, you know, just like, you know, how everyone, you know, likes basketball. But it is part of the game. It is a strategy. And so I think, you know, how they play will affect refs and, you know, letting things go or trying to determine if that was a flop or not, you know? And so I think they make it hard for themselves, but they also make it very hard for the refs, which could go in their favor.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think building off of your point on ref game planning, I think there's a lot to be said there. When you think about the regular season, refs are getting transported to different games at different times. So I feel like kind of how there isn't as much time to practice during the regular season for teams, there might not also be that for refs in terms of the game plan. So you think about it when the refs are, okay, you're going to be reffing this series against the Houston Rockets and the Golden State Warriors. Everyone knows that James Harden and the Rockets like to play for the foul. They like to flop. And so they're not going to give him those easy calls. I mean, it's just there in the game plan. Okay, they might, on a three-point attempt, they're going to fall down, or they're going to extend their shooting space, or whatever it is. And I think maybe that has something to do with the unfair treatment that the Rockets think they are receiving. It's because they just do it to themselves because they're out there hunting for fouls, which I think honestly is kind of destroys the game. It slows down the pace, makes it a lot boring, and really when they're calling a lot of fouls when there aren't fouls. But you know, that's just my personal opinion. I think the Rockets should be a little bit more self-conscious about how they play and what they do in their game plan and how the refs are going to respond to them with their game plan. So, yeah, what do you think about Game 1 and them complaining specifically about that?
I mean, I thought the whole Chris Paul getting tossed was kind of dumb. I mean, there's like 1 second left? Like
There wasn't a lot of time.
There wasn't a lot of time. It was definitely under.
And it was a 3-point game as well that led to a technical free throw for the Warriors.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a big call. But I think they also did, I mean, you can correct me if I'm wrong, they got a lot of calls that game, though, too. They went to the free throw line a lot.
They did. I'm a Warriors fan watching that game. It was almost like a free throw shooting competition on Houston's side.
So, I mean, I understand when it comes down to crunch time, like, those are the biggest plays. Those are the biggest moments. And there's, you know, little margin for error, you know, especially by the refs. And so it's hard. Like, I understand. Well, and one thing to understand about referees is that, you know, in high school basketball, you have the 2-ref system. You have one high and one low, and they're on opposite sides. When you get to college and to the NBA, there's a lot more refs. You do 3-man, so that you can get each individual angle. You know, when I was watching at the end of Game 1, if you look at the ref on where the ball was closest to, there was a player in front of him, and there was, you know, another player, you know, Chris Paul and them like fighting for the ball. He didn't have the best angle, and part of that could be his own fault, not putting himself in a better situation. But sometimes you just get a bad angle. Yeah. You know, and so I kind of agreed with the call after seeing it in slow-mo from a different angle, you know, from a camera, you know, from the upper perspective. But if you were to put yourself in that ref's shoes, honestly, it's a tough call to make when you can't see.
Yeah, honestly, and I know you and me, we both took the same reffing class, and we were able to ref intramural basketball games here at our college. And a lot of times, we would kind of get the same thing where players would complain to us about a call or a non-call. And I remember specifically this guy going up for a dunk, and I was facing towards his back, and another guy was jumping up towards him. And to me, it looked like he went straight up, so I didn't think it was a foul. And he missed the dunk, and he turns to me and starts screaming at me like, that was a foul, that was a foul. I didn't call it because I didn't see it. And I think that goes to your point, is sometimes the refs don't have the proper angle. The game is happening so fast, you can't really predict the future all the time to where you're going to be in the perfect angle to see the call. And so sometimes things are going to get away from them. And I also think with the Houston Rockets that they had many opportunities. James Harden still shot 14 free throws that game, but he also shot 4 for 16 from the three-point line. So instead of complaining about the refs, maybe complain about your shot selection, James Harden. That's how I feel personally. But yeah, I do think that's a great point by you, because it is really hard to get in the perfect position. There are 10 guys on the court at any given time, and players are going to be blocking you, moving around constantly. It's a lot to keep track of, and it's a lot to put yourself in the perfect position. So yeah, that's kind of what we feel about the reffing situation. Who do you think wins that series? Do you think the Warriors pull that one out?
Well, after watching Game 2, honestly, I hate to say it, I'm fearful that it might go to a sweep.
Oh, man.
But I think the Rockets will squeeze one out.
Really?
I really do. Which is interesting because before the series even started, you kind of had the feel that the Rockets were going to, really challenge the Warriors, at least from my perspective. I mean, you can correct me. I don't know. You're a Warrior fan. Did you see the Rockets as a threat?
I absolutely did, especially after the Western Conference Finals last year, and how much disdain the Rockets have for the Warriors. And it's always a different thing when you're a team that constantly beats another team. You don't really see them as a threat. So the Warriors beating the Rockets all the time in the postseason, the Warriors probably didn't see him as much of a threat as the Rockets saw the Warriors. So I think probably the Rockets wanted it as much as I hate to say it. I think the Warriors probably think that they're going to win that series. So I really did see them as a big threat, especially Game 1. I thought it was extremely likely that the Rockets were going to come out and steal that first game on the road. So yeah.
And I think for the Rockets to get back into this series, you kind of touched on it a little bit with James Harden's shot selection. I think if the Rockets draw better plays and get better shot selections, and basically become more efficient with their shooting, I think you'll see a lot more success, and they'll actually challenge the Warriors, because Warriors can shoot the ball.
They can.
They have a bunch of ballers.
They do.
I mean, I'm not a Steph Curry fan. He's a wonderful player. I'm not going to disregard his talent. KD, probably the best player in the league. Klay Thompson, I think, is the most underrated player on that team. He's a gangster.
No, he's so freaking dope. He's the guy who rolls up to the park with some Harry Potter glasses and chocolate milk, and then he shoots the lights out. He's insane.
And so, you can't. For the Rockets, you have to understand, they can shoot, they can score. Hopefully, the Rockets play better defense, but they themselves need to be better scorers, more efficient, and just put themselves in a better situation than they're at.
Yeah, I agree with that, because it was really interesting watching the opening of Game 1. I noticed this juxtaposition that, you celebrate the Warriors as this three-point shooting team that are always hunting for the three ball. But really, that was the Rockets. And most of their buckets, especially with the Warriors early on, their first 14, 15 points they had, 90% of them came in the paint. And that really opened up the rest of their offense for the rest of the game. And by contrast, the Rockets missed 6 or 7 threes to open the game. And I think that goes credit to your point. They need to be more efficient with it, because they're in these games early. They have the talent to do it. But if you're going to try to dig yourselves out of a hole by constantly shooting low percentage shots, really with threes compared to layups and maybe even some open mid-range jumpers, I think they're going to have a hard time coming back in this series. So I'll pick the Warriors to win. I originally had the Warriors winning in 6. I think more akin to you. I think 5 now. I think the Rockets will win a game at home, but I think the Warriors are going to take the series pretty easily. It looks like they haven't really learn from their mistakes last year in the Western Conference Finals. So, anything else you'd like to add on that series?
No.
No. What about the season, the Bucks? What do you think?
I think they had the best season in franchise history.
Well, yeah. Who do you think wins that series?
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, the C's. Like, I know that was
No, you're
a
good.
little bit confusing.
It's just another good matchup. It's hard. I think I'm gonna stick with Milwaukee,
Milwaukee,
but I think that one's gonna go to 6.
6.
Yeah.
So what makes you pick Milwaukee in 6?
I think they play better defense.
Yeah.
They're a more defensive team. Obviously, you have the Greek Freak. The one player that I've actually been watching closely is Eric Bledsoe. When he got traded from the Suns over,
Destroyed my fantasy team.
yeah, rest in peace. I think he's found a home. I mean, he was pretty good in Phoenix, but he has a home now, and he's producing like crazy, averaging more than 20 points a game, up there with assists and steals. I mean, he's in a place that really benefits his team, and he's also in his prime. You can argue that, and so I think just overall the Bucks have better pieces, and they have a better bench too. Their rotation and their that they have is probably the best in the league, to be honest.
Yeah. No, they have a really solid rotation. They have a lot of players that can do a lot of things. They're really versatile. And then I agree with you. I'm going to go with Milwaukee. Originally, I thought the Celtics, but upon thinking about it, I think the Celtics don't have as good of a team. I think they have a much better coach. But to me, the X factor comes down to Giannis. I think Giannis, to me, it's KD and Giannis, the two best players in basketball right now. And you can argue all you want, but those guys are big guys who can take any one-on-one and they're going to score. And in the case of Giannis, I worry about the Celtics just dealing with his size. Because I know a lot of their rotations, you'll include Kyrie and Jason Tatum, Gordon Hayward, and, we're rotating in there shooting guard, point guard, forward. I mean, maybe not Kyrie as a forward. And you have Al Horford in there, but I just don't think any of those matchups are even okay matchups against Giannis. So when it comes down to it, if you're going to have Giannis on Gordon Hayward, I mean, that's a mismatch. You have Giannis on Jason Tatum, that's a mismatch. Jaylen Brown has the athleticism, but Giannis is huge. He's got this wingspan, right? And then Al Horford doesn't have the athleticism. I just think they're in a bad situation wherever they are put in defensively, and I think towards the end of the game, if Giannis has the ball, I'm betting on him to get a bucket whenever he wants. So I'm picking the Bucks. I think it'll go to 7 though. That's where I contrast with you. I think they're, the Celtics shoot the 3 ball pretty well and play. They have a smart coach, so I think that's kind of where it'll go to 7. But I'll take Milwaukee in that one, and then I guess a quick Toronto and Philly. What do you think about that one?
Toronto wins that one for sure.
Yeah.
Philly, I think they have good players, but the only problem with Philly is they can't shoot. JJ Redick, obviously my favorite player, Duke player of all time. He's the reason why I like basketball, and I love JJ. I just feel like for Philly, JJ Redick, if he doesn't shoot well, they're probably not going to win.
Yeah.
I mean, he's probably the one player that you can argue that was that signed with that team. He's in the starting rotation. That his job is to score. But I mean, I love Embiid, but he's such injury prone.
Yeah, it's
getting kind of ridiculous. It's getting kind of ridiculous. And I mean, I'm not going to say that he's a cancer for the organization, but I'm going to say that it's starting to become a trend that when they need him most, you can't rely on him.
No.
And Ben Simmons, I mean, he's a jump shot away of being LeBron James.
Yeah, really, though.
I like his tangibles, what he can do. I mean, he's a 6'10" point guard.
That's crazy.
I mean, he's a freak, but so I just think Toronto has the upper hand. You mentioned and talked about Kawhi Leonard. I also think he's probably the most underrated superstar, and I mean, the claw, man. He's good defensively, and he's just a good player. And I think the Raptors are going to win that series.
Yeah, I do too. I think Raptors in 6. I know it's tied 1-1 as of now, and mainly because the same reasons you say. I think 3 is better than 2, and they have much better 3-point shooting. And I think Kawhi Leonard is one of the most impactful players on the court, meaning I think his 25 points mean more than like anyone else's 25 points in this series. So if, Kawhi Leonard scores 25, I feel like the Raptors have a much better chance of winning than if Philly scores 25, if that makes sense. Or excuse me, Embiid in Philly scores 25, and Embiid is inconsistent with his health. And so you can't really rely on him. I'm not a huge Ben Simmons guy at the moment. I think he could be something special, but like you said, the jump shot's really a kryptonite in his game, and it's really hampered him. He can only score like within feet of the basket. So picking the Raptors in 6, and then Denver, Portland. What do you think?
Dame time, baby.
Dame time.
Dame time. I do like the Nuggets. Earlier in the year, I thought they were actually my favorites to make a long run in the playoffs.
Mm-hmm.
They kind of fizzled out near the end. They're still a great team, and I mean, look at how far they've come ever since that Melo trade.
Crazy.
Way back when, like they have rebuilt their team. It's a fun series. It's gonna be a fun series to watch because, I mean, Portland, you have Damian Lillard, you have C.J. McCollum, and I mean, you can argue you have Enes Kanter, but on the flip side, the Nuggets, I mean, Jamal Murray has been fun to watch. In my opinion, he's been one of the most improved players in recent years.
He's a stud.
But then you have Jokic.
The Joker.
The Joker. You got the solid high-low player versus the two lows. Or, sorry, the two highs.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Portland, they don't really have a strong big man. I mean, rest in peace to their center, Nurkic, who freaking had a very severe and gruesome injury to his leg. Otherwise, I still would have picked them to win, but I think they could go farther in the playoffs. But I think this series it's going to go Portland in 6.
See, I disagree with you. I think Denver in 6. I think kind of like you were saying, they have the two guys up top. They have the Joker down low, but really, when I look at Portland, the problem to me is if Dame isn't scoring 30+, I don't really think they have a chance to win. And I think that's a big issue for them. So just simply for that fact, and the fact that Denver kind of plays more of as a team, they have a better rotation, I think, I'm going to pick Denver in 6. So there's the NBA playoffs, and that'll conclude our first episode. How do you think it went, Jason?
Well, it's called Dual Threat. I think our points, that we've made prove the point.
Yeah.
Dual threat when it comes to sports.
Yeah, dude, I really enjoyed it. It was a lot of fun. It's always fun. Like, it's crazy when you're talking about sports, we're going to have a short podcast. We look over and we're already at 40-something minutes. So, yeah, we have enjoyed it, have a lot of fun. We'll be back next week, probably. We'll be talking more NBA, NFL news. I know the NFL is a little bit more dead, so probably more focused on the NBA. So, thank you for listening. Tune in next week, and we really appreciate it.